Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sammy, and I'm with Hi Mama, the #1 childcare app. Today, I'm so honored to welcome everyone to this talk, and Hi Mama is proud to be the Gold Game Changer sponsor for this afternoon. Hi Mama is the only all-in-one childcare app that gives you all the tools you need to empower staff and engage parents, helping centers deliver top-quality programs for kids and their families. As a certified B Corp, Hi Mama was founded with the mission of using technology to impact outcomes for the largest number of children during their most formative years. Our product enables this by supporting and building relationships between all of the key people involved in early education and working in childcare centers. So if you're an educator, the Hi Mama app supports the educators on front lines with time-saving tools and educational content and assessments that are aligned to state or provincial frameworks. If you're a parent, the Hi Mama app engages parents to participate in their child's development and gives them visibility into the amazing work that educators are doing. And for directors, the Hi Mama app simplifies childcare management and provides easy ways to oversee and organize center documentation so you can focus on the kids and their experience. After today's wonderful talk, we invite you to visit our website at himama.com. That's HIMAMA.com. Because for us, this is about educating Generation Alpha and taking everything we've learned from decades of research to ensure we're equipping childcare providers to do their jobs in the best way they can. And that's also why today's conversation is so important and why Hi Mama is proud to sponsor this incredible conversation with Judy Jablon and Valora Washington, two distinguished thinkers and advocates in early childhood education. Judy and Valora are longtime friends of Hi Mama, and we're even bigger fans of them. So let's get started today with Valora. Over to you, Valora.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Sammy. We really appreciate the sponsorship of this special event by Hi Mama. Hello, everyone. I'm Valora Washington. The incomparable Judy Jablon and I welcome you to this webinar today as we think together about the path forward. We're taking an optimistic stance for the Alpha generation, those children born since 2010. And we're inviting you to join us today as we think about the challenges and opportunities that lie before us. We know deeply that we as educators have tools and strategies to help us focus on the positive difference we can continue to make for children, for families, for educators, for our nation. So we hope that by joining us today, you will renew and strengthen your individual agency and power. We've already demonstrated tremendous courage and power. Before we begin this brief webinar today about the path forward, Judy and I want to start with something very important to recognize, and that is that you are enough and we are enough to do the things that we have been called to do. We are resilient leaders of a profession that has been undervalued and misunderstood, and yet we rise to the occasion every single time to lead and to serve. Judy and I are so very, very proud of how you and how we are showing up to educate children, families, communities, and our legislators. You deserve so many accolades and respect. So many people never saw us before, but we're here today because of the leader that you already are. Judy and I planned this webinar today as one way that we can acknowledge you, encourage you, and thank you. With all of us working so hard and investing so much, we're ready for our nation to be the best place to grow up. We don't want to fall below what all of our sister nations are doing for infants and toddlers and childcare and preschool the way we are now. We have the skill and the talent. We have the opportunity. We can create profound, fundamental change in our communities, our states, our nations, our neighborhoods. This is going to be change that builds on the past of what we have done, but also creates synergy that comes from your leadership. Judy and I are optimistic right now because we know that what you do every day matters. Present circumstances might dominate, but when we prepare for the future and the path forward, it's important to remember our strengths and successes, things we've done consistently well, so that we can be inspired and have courage and have the power to move forward. Why lay this path forward? Because doing so is essential if we want to have excellence and equity for this alpha generation in spite of the circumstances. We're here to harness the lessons we've learned and to amplify our resilience for the way forward. Judy and I hope this hour will be a conversation with you. So to start, I want to ask all of you to take just 1 minute to type in the chat. Just type your location and your role and tell us why you're here. Something like, I'm a teacher from Houston and I'm here because fill in the blank. We really want to hear what you have to say. Judy, let's take a look at what people are saying.
I will do that with you, Valora, but first I want to say that I am so incredibly pleased to be your friend and colleague. Those words, I know they come from your heart.
Absolutely.
You moved me, and I hope that every person who's here, every single one, heard the passion and the conviction and commitment that you give each of us every day in this field. Thank you for being my friend, and thank you for agreeing to play with me today. And boy, we have people from everywhere. Have you noticed that our friends from Guam, it's 5:56 or 6:06 in the morning, and we have friends from New Zealand and California. We have friends from Pennsylvania. We have friends from Maryland and Florida. Gary from Massachusetts, Mimi from New York. Thank you for supporting us. We have colleagues from Toronto and Colorado Springs. One colleague says that they wanted to join us because they know we bring awesome optimism.
That's terrific. And I also noticed, because I recognize some of the names of the hundreds and hundreds of people who are joining us today. And I know that we have people from so many different backgrounds, multiracial, multilingual, different roles in the field. I think this is going to be a great conversation, Judy.
Unequivocally, Valora. I can't keep track. Each time I look, there's 78 new messages. So please forgive us if we haven't thanked you personally for coming, but we are so thrilled that you are here. If you haven't had, hello, Beth, if you haven't had a chance to type in the chat while you're here, we promise you that the reasons that you've come will show up in social media, and we will be using the chat to generate more conversation. Meanwhile, let me help us all get rooted in what our plan is for today. As Valora said, this conversation is about harnessing our optimism, recognizing the power we have in numbers and the incredible tools and strategies that we all possess. And so we'll start by kind of recognizing the challenges and thinking about the opportunities. Next, we'll think about tools and strategies that we can rely on. And then we'll think about how we harness our power and sense of agency. And with that, Valora, how about you get us started with challenges and opportunities?
Oh, thanks, Judy. You know, we can all think about what's happened over the past 18 months. We can think about our current situation, and we can think about opportunities to move forward. You know, for a lot of us, Judy, it's really challenging to think about the path forward because the coronavirus has weighed so heavily. It's still weighing heavily over our daily practice. And, you know, the childcare industry has been on the verge of collapse, right, for a very long time.
Oh, yes.
So there's no doubt that these have been very challenging times for us. The rules of the game have completely changed. Change is no longer an option. Every place we go, and every place in every setting, there's new rules, new safety protocols, infection mitigation efforts, fewer children and families being served. Costs so much more, Judy, for people to operate their programs. And now that the
stay in business.
Stay in business, absolutely. Now that the school year is starting, there's staffing shortages everywhere, Judy. I hear this all across the United States. We realize that not all children were safe at home. existing inequities and learning opportunities have just been heightened. There's so many concerns about educator workload and well-being. And even before the pandemic, there's huge gaps, Judy, you've written about this, between what we know from the science and what we're doing for kids and educators, huge gaps. So right now, the way I'm going to summarize this is that there's kind of three big buckets of challenges that we face, these elephants in the room. And the first challenge, elephant in the room, is the fact that there is a reality of uncertainty. So people just need to say that and not try to cover it up. Uncertainty demands our courage. We need vision and practical strategies to approach our roles right now. We have to ask ourselves, what are the principles that are going to guide all of this change? Teamwork, problem solving, critical thinking, essential for us right now. And the second big challenge is all the existential life challenges that we're facing individually and collectively, right? Because we're performing our roles in less than optimal conditions. Many teachers, they're just like the families of Alpha kids. We're facing income insecurity, housing challenges, extra duties at home, trying to balance our home and work commitments. And then that third big bucket of challenge is the Pandora's box, the one we open the minute we open our doors to the beautiful children who've spent important time of their brief lives online and inside. Yet they have been learning, but what they learned might not have been your curriculum. So we need a lot of empathy and compassion. And we need to remember, if you remember that story of Pandora's box, you'll remember that after everything flew out of Pandora's box, hope remained. And that's why we're optimistic. Barack Obama said, there has never been anything false about hope. For one thing, the pandemic has made the world understand more about the essentialness of our profession. Another good thing is there's a lot of conversations going on about equity for all children and the need for restorative justice. There's an opportunity that we can act boldly for change and set a foundation for change. And, we're really honoring right now every single one of you who've shown so much strength under stress. And so we need to think about how we can turn this moment into a movement for our children, for our educators. Yeah.
This moment into a movement. I'm putting
Turn the moment into a movement, Judy. That's what we need to do. So I'm going to ask everybody right now to just go to the chat and say, you know what, we've never had to open a new year in the midst of a pandemic. What do you think is going to be different? What do you think are the challenges and opportunities? And while people are writing, Judy, let me ask you right now, what are you imagining these challenges and opportunities? What are you thinking about?
Well, when I think about the fact that there are two ways for us to think about new people, new processes. And what tends to happen, I know even for me, is I get anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to harness every ounce of strength to turn that anxious into curiosity. We talk about the power of turning worry into wonder.
Yes.
And all of us in early childhood, remember, we've all taken classes in observation. We've talked about the power of observing with an open mind. And so we have to do the work. We have to do the work that helps us get through every single day by harnessing all of our inner resources to say, I do better when I'm relaxed. And if I can find it in my power to prepare myself each day to have that open mind, that will allow me to use my strength. So this person, Shushita, says, every challenge brings new learning. Life is all about learning and adopting and adapting to new conditions. Even when I'm anxious, I'm confident to turn myself to the new era because I am open to learn. I am a better learner than teacher. Oh,
that's brilliant.
Shushita, You have said exactly what the Alpha generation needs to hear.
Yes.
And Amanda says, I think it's an opportunity to engage with teams and to work collaboratively with parents in new ways. And Peggy says, we have to support one another. And Missy says, so many opportunities coming to early childhood in every state. What a movement if we are intentional. And Janice says, supporting families and our students through this challenging time. Kevin, thank you. He says, the biggest thing that the programs I work with are struggling to find teachers to hire. They have the children. And so what we have to figure out is how to use new strategies. To invite teachers in, to say, join us as a family. You know, some of the ways we've recruited before, we have to invite people to a party. We have to say, this is an opportunity like none ever before. Join us in changing the face of the nation. Sarah Gilliam, hello from Exchange, says,
hello, Sarah.
Motivating all to continue pushing forward and innovating despite fatigue, focusing on gratitude and advocacy. Woody Sue says, yes, we have to support the social emotional development, not just in young children, but in ourselves.
So much wisdom out there, Judy, so much wisdom.
Well, and I believe that if we create these kinds of conversations like you and I did today, that we're doing today, and that Hi Mama is encouraging us to do and also doing with us, we can keep finding the resilience.
Yes.
So with that, I think we need to think now, really focus on opportunities. So as optimistic leaders for the Alpha generation, I call upon all of us to activate curiosity. After 18 months,
long
there's
time.
no question that we're all feeling exhausted.
Yep,
Like
tired.
we have fatigue and we have no experience with this. You know, my friend and colleague and yours as well, Laura Ensler, says, we haven't been here before.
No.
We haven't done this. And so we have to ask ourselves, where do we find encouragement? Well, Valora, you used a quote by Barack Obama, and I'm going to share one by Jane Goodall. She says, you can't get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do, what I do, what you do, what every one of our colleagues does makes a difference. And we have to decide, and as my friend Tara Stiles would say, we get to decide on the kind of difference we want to make. So rather than being overwhelmed, let's prepare. Let's think about the ways in which we know how to cope. So for a little example, one of the commitments of optimistic leaders is to think impact. So instead of dwelling on stress and catching the negative emotional contagion around us, absorbing the feelings of fear and doubt that are surrounding us, we can be ready. We're around people who are being a little toxic. Plan your exit strategy. How do I want to extricate from my conversation that's pulling me down? And how can I provide the energy to be uplifting? And I think we did that right now by just inviting conversation, by turning it out to the group and saying, what are tools? What are strategies? So when you feel a group bringing you down, you have the opportunity not to be Pollyanna, but to think forward. And then as we think about the children of the Alpha generation, we have no way of knowing what kinds of outcomes we'll see. So let's think about strength-based strategies we've used with children and families before. and let's knock it out of the park. Could you please, all of you, add strategies you've used before, those strength-based strategies to support families, to support children? I think of Jerry Daniel, Valora, and many, many years ago, she said to me, look for the good idea, the good intent in what's in front of you. She said to me, you know, when a parent says, well, all we have after this flood is powdered milk. She said, well, make powdered milk and enjoy milkshakes by putting it, you know, whipping it up. You don't have a blender, use an egg beater and make it special, you know. And someone's just put in that, yes, Becky Bailey, conscious discipline is very powerful.
Yes.
Let's think about some of those strategies. How do we harness those strength-based strategies? Appreciative inquiry, positive
Yes.
mindset, looking at what children can do rather than focusing on what they can't do. Paul says, thinking about what I can do. Beth Bai says, I always try to give parents the benefit of the doubt. Drop the judgments. The less we know, the more we judge. So take the time to build the relationship.
And the less we know, the more curious we might be instead.
Yes,
Right.
yes. And my
Yeah.
colleague, Mimi Basso, who's on this call, says, turn worry into wonder.
Yes.
Karen says, cultivate authentic relationships. Yesterday, Valora, when I was with some folks in Arkansas, they said, make a commitment to yourself to be authentic. Jennifer McWilliams says, self-regulate before interacting with others. What a concept. Pause to take a breath and invite others to do so.
Pauline's saying we don't always have to know the answer. And I think that's good. We can be curious. What this all says to me, Judy, there's so much wisdom in our community. And what we must do to elevate this profession and to move this profession forward is find ways where we can do the work together and become those adaptive leaders that are going to create a sustainable change. And that we have so much wisdom to do that. We need resources and places to come together as a community and do that work.
Christine says the importance of shared understanding, and then we can generate the policies and procedures to guide us. And so what I would say, and Valora would agree, is in a conversation, start with, we use a carousel technique, start by inviting everybody to offer something on their mind. And try not to make it an adversarial conversation, but rather a conversation of inquiry where ideas are built on each other. So with that, Valora, I think we have lots of ideas about opportunities. Let's think about some tools and strategies.
Absolutely. And we're already beginning to hear so many tools and strategies from what people are writing in the chat. And as everyone on this call already knows, both Judy and I have written books for the field. Judy's new book titled The 5 Commitments of Optimistic Leaders for Children, and my book entitled Changing the Game for Generation Alpha. Both of these books really offer a lot of detailed tools and strategies about how to do what we're doing with optimism and strategies to move forward with the Alpha generation, their families, and among us as educators. So I just want to say a little bit about tools and strategies for working with young children today. And I want to say that supporting our young children today, this Alpha generation, really is going to require an optimistic stance because we are headed into uncharted waters. Generation Alpha, for those of you who don't know, really applies to that first generation of children born in the 21st century, or the children wholly born in the 21st century, and that would be children born since 2010. And in my research, I found that they have some unique qualities and characteristics. For one, they are a very diverse generation. Diversity is their signature. And the majority of these children in the United States of America are children of color. In general, they're being raised in smaller and constantly evolving families. They are more tech savvy, more tech exposed, more globally connected than previous generations. And with their generational differences, now we have the COVID-19 pandemic, which is promising to be a generation defining event for them. So we can plainly see that this next generation, the economy, the nation is going to be transforming in ways that we adults have never experienced. So we're not powerless in the face of this change. We do have tools to support them. And here's 4 tips to get the conversation started. One, I think to move the path forward, Judy, we have to really think about the Alpha generation and think always about who they are, not who we were, and certainly not who we want them to be because they're not being right in some way. Even in the dimmest light, we can see that their childhoods are so different from our own. So when it comes to the past, here's what we can do. We can reevaluate, we can retain, or we can relinquish traditions intentionally. We need to be present with our children for who they are right now. And we need to be very, 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 very careful about using deficit-based language around our children, like this term learning loss. As I said, our children have been learning something and a lot. So consider the way they were. A second way forward is we've got to really actively teach our children about diversity and inclusion. As I mentioned before, the majority of young children in the United States today are children of color. And filling our children with hope and optimism means helping all children understand the realities of the world around them. Our nation cannot thrive if we think that some children are expendable, especially as children of color become the majority in our nation. The third thing think we have to do as a tool and path forward is we really have to ensure that our children are having intensive relationships with adults and strong social skills. Many people in the chat are talking about this. I believe that the more technology advances, the more prized human skills are going to be. So we need to help our children develop strong social skills, collaboration skills. Relationships, interactions matter more than ever. And the fourth tip I'm going to offer just to get the conversation started is we can carve the path forward by adding power to everything we already know about family engagement. That is the secret sauce. That is the key of how we're going to move forward with the Alpha generation and also, frankly, getting the funding we need. Judy, I think that your 5 C's of optimistic leaders also offer a lot of tools and strategies for the path forward. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, Valora, thank you for that invitation. So one of the things we're learning from our research is that the 5 commitments of optimistic leaders are a way for us to be thinking about our own social emotional development. And interestingly, we had a comment a little while ago where someone said the social emotional skills of adults and children. And so when we think about the first commitment, think impact. Our actions, as Jane Goodall said, affect others. Someone said pausing and taking a deep breath. If we get up each morning and say, I want to practice the commitment of think impact, I get to say, instead of absorbing the fears and doubt from those around me, I'm going to be mindful of emotional contagion. And I'm going to be ready, as I said earlier, with that exit strategy. If you aren't familiar with a book by our colleagues, Derry Korolek and Laura Kolker, they have written a book called Making Lemonade, Teaching Young Children to Think Optimistically. Valora, I can't think of a better time for everybody to embrace that book.
Let's make lemonade.
we need to make lemonade.
Absolutely.
So as we think impact and we think about how we have the power to be intentional in our relationships with our colleagues, if we start by taking a little time to create that emotional and safe climate among the adults, children feel it.
Yes.
Families feel it. The second commitment is cultivate self-awareness. Yes, we all say we do reflection, but what are the ways in which we stress ourselves? Do we know when we've just had enough? Do we say to ourselves, I'm going to wake up this morning and before I read the news or look at Facebook or social media, I'm going to listen to a piece of music that I love. Because that piece of music that I love, whether it's Aretha Franklin or the Dixie Chicks, I'm dating myself, it's going to put me in a mood that then affects the moods of others. Who are the people that push my buttons? How can I get over myself and not have them push my buttons? As Beth said earlier, how can I quiet my judgments? So rather than falling into negative self-talk, I can't figure this out, I'm not good enough, remember your resilience. Call upon the strengths that you've discovered this past year. So let's take a moment before I go on. And could we invite some people to put in the chat box, what's a strength you discovered about yourself this year? And let's see if we can get 20 in 30 seconds.
Oh, that would be terrific, because I know that the people on this call have so many strengths, and that's what's gotten us to this point so far. So as we're about to start this new school year, let's remember those strengths. Great question.
Kim says resilience and flexibility. Pauline says, I'm intuitive. Iggy says courage and knowledge. Diana says creativity. Janice agrees with resilience and giving. Yeah, we've learned how to Zoom.
Absolutely.
I can create positive habits, empathy, resiliency, flexibility, better self-regulation. So invite others to share the strengths that they've harnessed this year. I don't think any of us knew that we had tools and strategies to get through 18 months. The third commitment of optimistic leadership is nurturing relationships. Find your allies, combine your wisdom. Rather than arguing, put all the strategies on the table, then merge them, cluster them. Then say, what do we do first? What do we do second? What do we do third? No offense, early childhood community, but we can spend a lot of time talking. Let's put those strategies together, line them up, and get to work.
When you talked about we spend a lot of time talking, I want to bring up again the importance of family engagement. And one of the best things we can do as we're starting this new year is listen to the children, listen to the families. And I know that a lot of people have back to school nights or center welcome days where we tell a lot of information. This is a great time to better emphasize listening.
Which means activating curiosity.
Absolutely.
And letting the wisdom of others guide you. The fourth strategy of optimistic leaders is refining communication. Lately, Valora, we've been talking about how we can reframe language. You know, in a conversation with a group last week, we talked about words that make us feel warm and words that make us feel resistant. words that can create self-righteousness. So learning loss, you talked about that before, knowledge gaps. What about focusing on what strengths we got this year? So thinking about exploration, discovery, possibility. So choose your tone, choose your words, and you'll fortify yourself. And finally, the last of the 5 commitments, activate curiosity.
Mhm.
One of the key features of curiosity is not just question asking, it's persistence.
Mhm.
And optimists stay persistent. They don't have rose-colored glasses. They recognize that there's a path forward. There will be bumps, but if we do it together, we'll get there. So with that, Valora, I kind of want to invite us to think about harnessing our agency and power.
Yeah, showing our power, claiming our power, that's so important for us. And Judy, you and I have been around a long time, so we've seen a lot of things and we've experienced a lot of things, but we've never been through a pandemic, right? So what we do is we reach back into the experiences and skills and strengths that we've had in the past, and we claim our power and try to wrap it around what we're experiencing right now. So everything that we've learned about the alpha generation and everything that we've learned about being optimistic leaders builds our resilience for this path forward. It builds our resilience and our agency and our ability to claim our power. So I want us to think together about what gives you agency and power. And as you're thinking about that, as I'm talking, please write in the chat, where's your power coming from? What's giving you agency? Claim your power. We want to hear about how you are claiming your agency and power. Here's a few things that I think of in terms of claiming agency and power. And the first is respect. You know what? We are people in a profession who have experienced a lot of disrespect and lack of recognition in the past. But I think this is an opportunity for us now to claim respect and accept nothing less than respect for what we do. You are a true hero in this pandemic. Claim your respect and do not settle for any kind of disrespect. As you're thinking about how we're going back, what the environment's going to be like, what the safety protocols are like, claim respect throughout that process. Similar to that is, I want you to recognize your own competence. Just as I said, Judy and I have never lived through a pandemic before, but we're competent. We have skills that we can call upon just like you do. Recognize your competence. You are not powerless and you are not unknowledgeable in the face of all the situations that we're having now. Similar to that, think about what your essential strengths are and build those. You get stronger by building on your strengths. You do not get stronger by claiming all your worries. You get stronger by claiming your strengths. What has made you successful in the past? So some of those things you may need to change to adapt to the situation, but think intentionally about your strengths and how to build on them in this context. Final thing that I want to say about claiming your power, promote equity in everything you do. That is a unique contribution that we educators can make right now at this moment of time in the United States of America. We have got to promote equity in everything that we do. We celebrate children for who they are. They have strengths too. Let's be curious about them and their families. What did it mean for them to spend more time with their families or with technology? So please write in the chat, what have you learned in the past year about your own power and your own agency? And how can you use that moving forward? Judy, what are people saying in the chat?
Coming right up.
All right.
We celebrate our team, but not by comparison, but by honoring.
Yes.
Then Rebecca says that my voice matters. Your voice matters. Every one of our voices matter. And you know, Nicole and I often talk about how sometimes people inadvertently say, well, I want to give you your voice. Well, nobody gives us our voice. We have our voices.
Yes,
it's
we
just
do.
that sometimes we fail to make space for all voices. And the thing is that people desperately need to feel seen and heard. And so we have to find some reciprocity here. We have to create conversations where we're willing to listen to the voices of others and where we're willing to be authentic in putting out our own voice. Peter Senge talks about the power of having conversations of inquiry rather than conversations of advocacy when we're trying to build close relationships. We are hearing a lot about teamwork. One of the things we've been doing in our work is bringing together voices of very diverse groups, parents and van drivers and teaching assistants and coaches all together on remote conversations. And this past month, our blog, Valora, was about our carousel technique, where everybody gets a turn to talk before anybody responds. And it's a powerful way for everyone to be seen and heard, and for people to feel their sense of agency and power. We've got Sarah saying, life is a roller coaster, especially now. Connection with other people is where I have found hope, power, and meaning. Thank you for that. And Blanca says, being intentional is a way to find power,
Yes.
and agency. And she also Pauline talks about co-regulation. Any other? I am a social individual, says Sushita. Delin says, Delin is a very empowering, powerful person. I cannot empower anyone else. This means that I have the power and can give it out. I can help put conditions in place for others to succeed. And you do that so well, Delin. How important it is to take care of myself.
Absolutely.
Deborah Blackburn, we need to underline that. I can't be, this is like words we all have to write down. I can't be my best self, my best me, if I'm mentally, physically, and emotionally drained. My no is someone else's opportunity to say yes. That should be a sticker.
That's a poster.
Yes. Naveen, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Be patient and have self-confidence. Jessica says, being authentic in your intentions. Hello, Ed. I'm dealing with a new reality, but an old problem. The recently issued data from the 2020 census paints a picture that will pour gasoline upon the fires of white supremacy, something that has been an increasing topic around the United States. Creating safety in our dialogues and community engagement must require an understanding of how to understand and support the role of race and identity in the public discourse now impacting the diverse milieu of Generation Alpha. Thank you for your wisdom, Ed.
Yes.
And Carla, thank you for I'm not even going to try to say your name. If I was face to face, I would. Sit down and breathe. To be extra patient when helping other adults learn and to modify one's communication style to best fit those you are working for. And Stephanie says, I can focus and move forward. So much wisdom in this chat.
So much.
So much. Laura, I think we're at this point where we might want to ask one more question, which is, what are some ways that you've been able to respect the space and the challenges of others. Anybody willing to offer any ideas? My colleagues, I've had to sit with some discomfort. This has allowed time to gather many things, including self-regulation, pause, critical thinking, philosophical reflection, forgiveness, acceptance, understanding. And then Rebecca says, practicing active listening. I feel I've learned so much from my colleagues in Arkansas, Alabama, and Mississippi in this past year. We keep, Valora said, you said, Valora, at the beginning of the webinar, the power of listening. And I think just being willing to be curious, to be open, and to not feel like we have to have all the answers, but rather that we're making space for the conversations.
And that's been critically important in this past year. I mean, throughout the year, there have been issues that have come up around which people have huge disagreement to vaccinate or not vaccinate, to open your program or not open your program. There's been so many things so many questions that have come up over this past year, and people differ. Within families, there's differences. So it's been a great opportunity for us to practice some of those listening and empathy skills, and also patience.
So Valora, can you offer us a few of your amazing tips about, or get us started thinking about some things that we've learned in the last year that will help us harness our power?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and taking forward from this conversation, I think there's, just to get the conversation started, I think there's 4 things I could say, 4 essentials for moving forward and what I've learned. One is being courageous and having a big dose of courage. And also remembering that the root word of courage is core, which means love, C-O-U-R. So when I'm having courage, I'm also having love. And I think that has been something that over and over and over again through this pandemic, we've had to stand up, speak up, have our voices heard even more loudly. For many of us, it takes courage to do that outside of our circle. So that big dose of courage, which is also the same as a big dose of love. That's what we need in this path forward. We're hearing so much of my second point in the chat. Community. We have got to build community among us, relationships with our colleagues, with our families, really building that community, because we're going to get through this together. And having that strong community around us that we can talk to, share ideas, that matters a lot right now, not trying to do it alone. A third thing is keeping our commitment. I know all of you on this call are deeply committed. We have people from Guam at 5 o'clock in the morning getting on this webinar. People are committed, sustaining our commitment over time. And what is a commitment? A commitment is a pledge that we make to ourselves about what we're going to do. And I'm pledging with you, Judy, and with everybody on this call that I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to stay the course. I'm going to stay on this journey. And I think sustaining our commitment, even as we're seeing staffing shortages and all the challenges around us, that I'm going to stay this course for our children and our educators. And the last thing I would say is our imagination, being creative. We've heard people in the chat several people talk about being creative, because if we can't imagine it, we can't create it. And so we have got to use our imagination. Our imagination comes from our values, and our imagination needs to come from that core, that place of love. And so I'll just end these tips by saying, President Franklin Roosevelt said that we might not be able to prepare the future for our children, but we can prepare our children for the future. And I think that's where we are right now. We can't control the coronavirus and all its variants. And, there's things we can do individually, but there are things externally that are happening that are beyond our control. But we can work with and prepare our children with love, with that core, with that commitment, and with our community.
Wow, Valora, those were beautiful. I'd like to add on with a beautiful quote from Nelson Mandela, who says, "A winner is a dreamer who never
Love
gives
it.
up."
Love it.
So with that, we have some things we want to share with our friends today, if I'm not mistaken.
We do.
So Valora and I are very eager to stay in conversation with you. And so I think we'd love to see the first slide.
Yes, thank you. So Judy, should I talk about our book study sessions? I'm really excited about this, Judy.
Oh, me too.
And thanks to Hi Mama too. Just kudos to Hi Mama. We're going to be able to offer 150 of you, 75 for each book, a free book study, a 75-minute book study on optimistic leadership, or a 75-minute book study on the Alpha generation. And I'm really excited about it. There are applications on each one of our websites, and you can see our websites on the screen. Also, if you look in chat, there will be a link to the applications to participate in these book studies. And we will, if you win and if you're chosen, you will get a free book in the mail in advance of the book studies. And you have until September 24th to apply. Very excited about offering these book studies, Judy.
Me too. And just to clarify, the book study about optimistic leaders will be on November 3rd, and the book study about Generation Alpha will be on November 10th. And if you have any questions about how to sign up to apply, just reach out to either of us or to our websites. And thank you, Hi Mama, for sponsoring these book studies. We could not have done this without you.
I also want to say that following this webinar, you will also be getting a follow-up email that will list a lot of the resources and books and other things that we've referred to and that have been part of our presentation today. So look for that follow-up email. That follow-up email will also have a link so that you can sign up and apply for the book study.
I want to say thank you to Ron Spreewenberg and Sammy Lau for being absolutely the best partners that we have had.
Absolutely.
They really stepped up and, helped us to be able to do all of the things that we wanted to be able to offer you. And so thank you. And I think the next slide will talk about the fact that Valora and myself will each do a webinar for Hi Mama. Valora's will be on Thursday, November 18th from 2 to 3 or 11 to 12 Pacific. And obviously registration details will come to everybody who has attended our party today. And I will do a webinar for Hi Mama on Thursday, December 2nd from 2 to 3. So you have the book studies to look forward to, and you have webinars to look forward to. And Valora and I had so much fun planning this that who knows what you'll see coming from the collaboration between Leading for Children and the CAYL Institute in the coming months. And so I would really like to express so much appreciation to our respective teams and to our partners and funders who help us every day to make the kinds of experiences that are so important to Valora and to myself. And so thank you to the Alabama Department of Early Childhood, Foundation for Child Development, Eastern Bank, Westside Montessori School, and Arkansas State Childhood Services. We are getting incredible accolades, Valora, in our chat. And it's so great to see so many of our friends who have shown up today. We totally love seeing our friends and families. And I think we're at the moment where if anybody has a question or a comment that they want to pose to us, there is one more thing that I want to say to everybody, and I think Valora is right there with me. So Valora and I feel so grateful. Oh, hi, Andrew Davis. We feel so grateful to be able to be supportive colleagues to one another. And many of you have, friendships with us. We really want to say to you, just reach out. If you feel the need or the desire or the wish to have a conversation, don't be afraid. Find that strength, find that courage that Valora just talked about, and say, I could use a pep talk. I could use a friend. And I know with my heart of hearts that Valora and I would love to be there for all of you.
Yeah,
So Valora, do you have any closing thoughts that you want to offer this amazing group of people who joined us today?
Yeah, we're honored. It is an honor for us. And I say with great humility, and I know from working with Judy, her heart is humble as well, that we count it as a privilege to work with you and to be in service to this field and to this community. We're grateful to be able to do this. In our upcoming webinars with Hi Mama, we're going to be able to get more into detail about some of the tools and strategies that we use. But as we are ending this webinar, we want you to be encouraged. We want you to be strong. We want you to have a community, and we want you to know that we have what it takes to make a difference for each and every child and all the teachers that work with them. And we just thank you for being that person who is willing to stand up as a powerful voice for children.
There you go. I've just put in the chat box that it's our style to send out a mailing to everyone who registered, and we'll capture some of the tips and strategies that you all offered in the chat box. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. I think we'd like to thank Sammy and Ivy and Amanda and Sarah and Gretchen and everybody who helped us to make this a wonderfully successful conversation. And to you, Valora.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.